Heritage Living. Today I wanted to talk with everybody about creating peace in our homes. How do we create peace out of often stressful environments? Obviously, the Word tells us that when we're Christians, when we're believers, and we are, in the relationship that we're supposed to be in at that time with Christ, that His peace gives us a peace that surpasses all understanding, no matter what's going on around us. But I do believe as Christians that there are things that just we are responsible for, all right? And a lot of it is our own attitude and our own thought process. I mean, that's the Bible tells us that we're to bring our mind into captivity. And I think that's one of those things right there. So on a level of how do you do it as a human, as a person with flaws, I wanted to share some thoughts on this. Okay, first off, some things that negatively affect our home. Now, I'm going to put this disclaimer in here. I know there are situations where there is not peace because it is an extreme situation, all right? Whether it's from somebody else living in the home or whatever the case. This is a video for the standard home that has just the standard issues, and maybe the peace just isn't there. Maybe home's the last place everybody wants to go just because it's so chaotic, or other people's attitudes just aren't right. Not to say they can't be adjusted. And this, like I said, this is for the mainstream across an even keel line, not the extreme situations. So, things that can negatively affect peace in the home is our own attitude. All right, maybe we don't have a really bad attitude, but maybe our reactions, as mild as we think they are, can affect other people's attitudes. Things like eye rolling, things like sighing, those do have an effect. And if you're an eye roller or a sigher, chances are pretty good you don't even realize that you're doing those things. I'm speaking from personal experience, and I was a sigher for a while, and I wasn't even a sigher until I was in my early 40s. And then that went on for a couple of years, and it was like I had this huge wake-up call that said, wow, this is really affecting my family, and not necessarily their attitudes, but how they were perceiving I was perceiving them. All right, maybe a stressful situation came up where the kids had some conflict, or my husband and I just weren't, quite on the same level of communication at the same time. And if I sighed, that told them that I was irritated with them, or that I thought that, they had the issue, when really I didn't even, and it got to be such a habit, I didn't even realize I was doing that. And so I was communicating something without even knowing I was communicating it. Ron used to be an eye roller. And early on in our marriage, he probably rolled his eyes for the first, 7 years. And it would just bother me, man. It would just irritate me. And I would try to talk to him, and he wouldn't even know he was doing it half the time. And then finally he started, when he would do it, I'd start pointing it out. That's not necessarily always a good thing if you're not doing it in love, okay? And one night we were listening to Dr. Dobson, and they had a speaker on there, and they were talking about little gestures of communication that we don't always realize we're doing, and eye rolling came up. And it was really, really funny because Ron didn't even realize he'd been doing it for a long time. And then when he started realizing he was doing it, he didn't think much of it. But then when he heard that, he realized that was communicating a lot of negative thoughts from him without him actually saying anything. Other ways that we can make our home not very peaceful is when we quit communicating ourselves. Maybe we're prone to go into a silent treatment mode to somebody who's irritated us. Maybe we're cupboard door slammers. Maybe we're, slam things down on the table, and though we're not being physical with anybody, we are definitely setting up a situation of an atmosphere in our home that is not healthy. These are all things that can be negative to our family and to our atmosphere. Other things are maybe just little comments that we make. Can't wait for school to start. Can't wait to go back to work. Can't wait, for you to go stay the night somewhere, or whatever. Without even really thinking it. Maybe we don't even really mean it. Just stress levels are high, and it just comes out. We need to process what our actions are. Now, what do you do when it's not your actions or your words that create an unpeaceful atmosphere in your home? We have got, as women, as keepers of the home, we have got to make it a point to make that atmosphere to be peaceful. And if it's somebody else that is creating the unpeaceful environment, first off, we have to understand we can't change somebody else. All right, that can't be done. The only thing we can do for somebody else is pray for them and ask God to talk to their hearts, show them what's going on, and hopefully that will trigger something in that person. But we can't change somebody else. If it's somebody you can communicate with, maybe it's somebody in your home that, even though maybe they're creating an atmosphere that hinders peacefulness, if it's somebody you can communicate with, you just make sure you do it in love. The example I gave to you about Ron rolling his eyes. When I would bring it up, it wasn't, lots of times, because, eye rolling and you get a conversation going and, depending on the communication level between the two people, for us, it was humorous, but yet I was letting him know at the same time that it was beginning to bother me. And so it wasn't a high tension conversation. And when I would bring it up, I would make sure that, I wasn't doing it to be high tension. You got to kind of use some wisdom to decide when to say something and when not. And not all people in your home you're going to be able to communicate with. So if it's somebody you can communicate with, and there's some things that maybe you've acknowledged, maybe you can present it to them through love and definitely pray about it before. But when it's somebody you can't talk to, the best thing that you can do is watch your reactions. Create an environment. Some people walk into a home. Some people, walk into their home and they're not even acknowledged by their loved ones. Some children get up in the morning and mom and daddy don't even say good morning. We need to make sure that we acknowledge the people in our home around us. And if we're the only one doing it, it may not feel like it at first, but they are going to start to realize what's going on and they will reciprocate at some point in time. I think one of the most important things to create a peaceful atmosphere in your home is just that acknowledging, hearing, letting somebody know that they're there, and doing it in a non-confrontational way, but in an embracing way. Good morning, honey. How did you sleep last night? Or I'm glad you're home. Did you have a good day? Whatever the case. And I know this may sound too simple for some, but I have been in too many homes where somebody walks through the door after being gone all day and they're not even acknowledged. There's no, hi, glad you're home. There's nothing. There's no good mornings. And it does. That's like super negative in my opinion. The other things that I think a lot of people take for granted is, we live in a day where we have so much exterior sound going on, whether it's the TV or music, and it can even be positive things. You can say, well, I listen to preachings or I listen to Bible on, CDs, or I'm listening to this self-help book or whatever. That's all well and good. But if we're always doing that all day long, and that means that people are combating for other people's attention because of what's going on around, we can't hear the person talking to us and really hear them when something is always in the background, drawing our attention away from them. So I think it's important that we have quiet time in our home, especially when we're together as a family. If we're, there's times to be entertained. There's absolutely times to be entertained. But we spend more time as a society being entertained than we do communicating. And so to have a peaceful home, we have to focus intentionally on communication. And if you don't have communication in your home, you've got to work on ways to bring it back into your home. I just feel that is like number one, because once you get that communication going again and eliminate negative communication, there's doors that begin to open, and the level of communication heightens so much that you do all of a sudden become the simple things you don't think about doing, like I said, about acknowledging the person, greetings, etc. It just happens. Another thing I think is really important is that as families, we spend time, a specific time during the day, communicating specifically. Like there's going to be that time where the whole family knows they're getting together, and you're going to sit there and you're communicate. Whether primarily, for most, it's like that would be mealtime. There's not a day that goes by that we don't come together as a family and have one meal. Our main meal, actually, that we do the most communicating is breakfast, and then I usually will either make a late lunch or an early supper. And as long as we hit one of those meals where everybody's together, and most often for us, because we hit both. But I don't feel bad if we miss one. But our primary focus is one meal a day to sit down, not rush, and to communicate and listen to everybody and what everybody has to say. Communication, because we live in a society where we're all, or so many of us are self-absorbed in our screens, whether it's a phone with texting or, computers with email. There's lots of things we do have to relearn. And it's hard to pull, especially older children, away from those things when they've been allowed to do it. But I think by encouraging in a positive atmosphere and realizing, if those kids have screens, it's our fault, all right? Kids don't get their phones, they don't get their computers on their own. Mom and dad have given it to them. So if mom and dad have given them those things, and there's a piece that has been eliminated in the home or lack of communication that would create the piece, and mom and dad realize that those things are negative, it's got to be done in such a way that, mom and dad have to come forward and say, you know what, we were wrong, we're sorry, but we realize this, we gave these things to you, and now we need to have you decrease the time, instead of just saying, oh, you spend too much time on your phone, you spend too much time on your computer. If they do that, then that's, we have to stop and realize it's the parents' responsibility and their fault for allowing that. And instead of pushing it over on the kid, that doesn't mean it's going to make it any easier, the battle, when you say, I want you to reduce your screen time. It may be just as hard, but at least you can feel good about saying to your child, I'm not blaming you. I know that it was my decision to allow you to do this. All right. And which in the end will end up going a long ways. But if you can, eliminate screen time and stuff in your home and get more family activities, maybe board games aren't your thing, but if it is, that's a great thing to do. Puzzles, anything like that. But also, if it can be working together, creating that meal that you guys are going to sit down and spend that time communicating with. All these things enhance the peaceful environment in the home. I think one of the hardest things, honestly, for most of us is to be intentional. We have to intentionally want something. And in order for it to happen, we have to plan ahead and make these decisions that when we have these opportunities, we're going to take advantage of them. I think too often we're not intentional. It's not that we don't want something, but we're not purposed in our heart. And the first vision you have to get, if you want peace in your home, is just that you want peace in your home. Then you have to go to step 2 and say, what's holding the peace back? Step 3, after you've decided what you want, after you've identified it, step 3 is, what can I do personally to create a more peaceful atmosphere? And then step 4 is, how can I get my family involved in it? God is not a God of disorder. All right. He's not a God of confusion. And that's when we don't have peace in our home, that's inevitably what ends up happening. Creating routines in our home. I'll stay away from the word schedule because I know it scares many people, and I am not good at keeping a schedule, but we do have certain routines in our home that creates a peace within, like, the younger children, because they know what they can plan on, whether it's, bed's at this time and there's going to be story time or storytelling before bed. Little routines can help create and add to that peace. Dinners at a regular time or in a regular time span. Even having regular meals. If you have certain meals you really like, having them specific days of the month. Little things for routine can create and add to the peace in your home, it helps to eliminate chaos, and which of course helps to eliminate stress. And when we eliminate those things, when we replace it, the peace flows into it. So I guess that's the key to this video today, is to encourage you that as keepers of our homes, we're responsible for the atmosphere. And again, there's extreme circumstances that you have no control over, but for the majority, the higher percentage, we have a lot of control over the atmosphere in our home, and we have to make it a point to create that. So I hope you're encouraged today. I hope you remember that we serve a mighty God, and that His peace does surpass all understanding. And if we, lean on Him and search in His Word, that He will guide us and show us what it is that He wants from us and give us the strength to do it. So peace to your homes and to you. God bless. We'll talk soon.